be we're gonna be getting rid of Twitch here soon. So
that's funny. It seems that the opposite normally. Everyone's moving to Twitch from YouTube streaming.
We have so many people that watch us on Twitch or on YouTube, and we get nothing. I have like 2 followers on Twitch. And we're like, oh, maybe we should start doing video games. Then it was like, no, because if someone searches for the company for 3D printing and they find our Twitch channel before they find our website.
Oh, weird.
That may not be a great representation of what we do.
Yeah, no, not so much.
So,
well, it's like, what was it? I think it was like Zach Friedman had switched from doing like YouTube to Twitch. And I was like, why? I don't
spoke to Zach about this. Zach and I are friends.
Okay.
And he's like, for what people want, Twitch makes more sense, right? Twitch is where you want to watch people, you want to hang out and all that, where YouTube is more of that shorter form content. And the amount of editing, like if you watch his videos, you know that guy is doing editing all the time.
Yeah.
It is crazy how much editing he does.
Yeah, for sure.
And I respect that because I know the amount of work that goes into it. But for Twitch, it's just like, no, there isn't any editing. It's rapid fire. Things happen the way they do, and it is what it is.
If I was ever to do like video content like that, it would have to, I think, be live or basically completely unedited, because I cannot, bother myself to do any of that.
This is why we do it live. And speaking of which,
for sure,
we are live. This
Sweet.
Is the Making Awesome Podcast, Season 2, Episode 14. And we've got the Maker Extraordinaire. You are a maker, engineer, and an artist. We got Adam, and I might butcher the last name, so go ahead and tell us who you are, where you're from, what you did, and as long as you love me, give us the Backstreet Boys.
What? It is Adam Hiley. As my high school teacher used to say, highly unlikely. Who's her way of remembering it.
It's a really good brand name, though.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I mean, I'm always kind of been a weird dude, so highly unlikely was fitting for me. But yeah, as you led into, I do a lot of things. I've been in the open source world for quite a while, really starting back in college, because I got big into open source software back then, but then also went into open source hardware in 2008, 9, somewhere around there.
That's when it started to get popular.
Yeah, it's really funny looking back, because like, well, I wouldn't give up my childhood of the 80s for anything. I'm still a little bit jealous of children of today who got to grow up with like proper Arduino. I mean, I made a device for my mother the other day that has it's a UV meter for a photography thing. And it has more processing power than the computer that I had in high school.
Was it using a Pi 3 or a Pi 4?
No, it was one of the Adafruit like M4 feathers or whatever. No, so it's kidding. Like 150 megahertz. I mean, I don't know if it actually had more like, floating operations per second or whatever than that computer, but it had more megahertz at least. So it was at least, single core as well, but it was generally faster. Yeah, the stuff that you can get for $10 today is insane. But anyways, I ran a company called Maniacal Labs for 7 or 8 years, which did all sorts of open source hardware, mainly related to LED control. I feel like I got to sort of ride the front of a wave of a lot of this stuff. I did a lot of LED control stuff before it got easy, which is why I sold a lot of hardware for it. And now it's just
you off.
Did what?
Does WLED piss you off? And how it's fully open source for the individually addressable RGB LEDs?
Yeah. Because for a while I had like the predominant, like if you wanted to not use C like library, it was called BiblioPixel for doing LED animation and stuff like that. It was all in Python, which was heavily used for quite a while. But yeah, like I was doing that all before then. One of the more recent things I'm kind of been known for was a project called the Engravinator, which is a tiny, cute little diode laser engraver. But again, I launched that. I've been working on it for a few months, like at the end of 2018. I launched at the beginning in 2019, and we were actually going to sell kits. We had kits for sale on Tindy the beginning of 2019. Well, guess what flooded the market in 2019? Cheap diode laser engravers.
That's true.
It didn't go well.
It did.
I mean, it went well for everyone else, but not for me. I mean, it was still a fun project to do. So yeah, I've done a lot of open source hardware stuff like that. Big into 3D printing these days, obviously laser cutting. For those that aren't aware, I work for LightBurn software, which we do laser cutter control software for a wide range of laser cutters and engravers. That is not an open source thing, but it is still
it's totally affordable. And
yeah.
If you want to go with the open source, is RDWorks even open source?
It's not. RDWorks is proprietary.
Okay.
The LightBurn was originally created basically like the original intent was feature parity with RDWorks. Because RDWorks is terrible.
It is atrocious.
It's to support the Rgb controllers, which are a Chinese-made controller board, and the controller board is great. It's FPGA based. It's super fast, but the software is lacking. The best example I can give of that is when you go to connect what port you want to connect to, like for the device, they just give you a drop-down list that's COM1 through COM255, and you just pick one.
Yep.
Like, it's not that hard to just filter and show the correct ports. But anyways,
as someone that came from RDWorks, I was well within the first 50 users of LightBurn. And I think I just saw that my license needs to be renewed, so I have to go and pay you guys to keep doing your work. But it is one of the easiest software purchases and renewals that I make every single year. And I, just like everybody else, gripe at per year software. This is one of those where I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to go back. I don't care. Take the money. I don't want to go back.
Well, I mean,
go back.
To correct you on that a bit, it's technically not per year. You can keep using it forever.
This is true.
It's just you don't get updates.
You don't get the updates.
And
I do like that.
Yeah, and we recently raised the price from 40 for G-code to 60, and from, what was it, 80 for the DSPs to 120. But the renewal is still $30.
Okay.
It's not gone up, which I don't know that it will, but it's not yet. Still very affordable, and that's just if you want updates.
So maybe then I should. I'm like, it's been a while since I updated. I was running before 1.0. Oh, no, I wasn't, because I did the video on 1.0. Okay, so I was at 1.0, and there was a very particular thing that I didn't like about 1.0 when I was working with patterns, and I wanted to change one thing. I had to redo the whole damn pattern. In 1.0.6, that was all fixed, and I'm like, oh shit, damn it! All right, I haven't updated in so long, and I've missed out on some really great features. So
were you not using virtual arrays?
Yes, no. Before I wasn't using virtual arrays, so
that's part of the problem.
Maybe I'm just an idiot, which is also absolutely part of the problem.
LightBurn is one of those things that is funny. I've been working for, and I swear I'm not here to be a shill for LightBurn. I do genuinely love my job. Let me just say that. Like I said, I worked in open source hardware and software for a long time. I worked for Red Hat for 5 years before this, and Red Hat makes Linux software. I know it's weird that people pay for Linux, but let's not get into that. That's a whole different thing. It was always funny. People get really confused. Like, wait, there's a company that makes Linux soft. It's like, yeah, people will pay for it. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But anyways, like you said, it's affordable. I greatly enjoy just still being part of that community with it and getting to see what people make with the software that I write. So that's the fun part. But yeah, there's virtual arrays, which is near and dear to my heart because I wrote the feature,
really?
Which allows, the funny thing of it is because of the sort of structure of our development team, which until June and July of this year was me and Jason.
Yeah, there's only a couple of you guys. Now there's a few more.
Yeah, we have over 12 employees now.
Okay, no kidding. That's some growth right there.
Yeah, I mean, I started March of 2020. I had the perfect time.
It's a good time to start a new job.
Yeah. I left Red Hat to work full time from home in March of 2020. Like literally a week after I left, everything shut down.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So I was
April of 2020. So I'm like, if there's never a better time to be stuck at home with a back injury, that is the time to do it.
That's fair. Yeah.
Not recommending back injuries ever. God, it's been the worst 18 months of my life. But Yeah.
Back stuff sucks.
Yeah, no,
But
it absolutely does. And you sent me your website. I don't think I'd ever looked at your website before. And we were talking before this about, your love of LEDs, and it finally hit me like, oh my God. The LED arrays on your website, you custom coded yourself, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, all of them. So that's where that BiblioPixel came in.
Yeah.
There might be some early ones on there that weren't using that, but basically that's one of those weird software projects that came out of initially when I was first getting into like the digitally controlled LEDs. Back before we had NeoPixels and dot stars, we had things like LPD 8806. And it's an SPI bus based protocol. One of the reasons why it was usable at the time was because you could control it both from an Arduino and from a Raspberry Pi. I started with a Raspberry Pi, and this was like, I bought a Raspberry Pi V1, and the first thing I went and did was bought a roll of LEDs to control with it. So like the very, very early LEDs.
When in doubt,
and very early Pis. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to control it from Python because I figured it'd be a little bit easier than doing it with C++. And I found a library that was specifically for that one type of LED. And that ended up, I just kind of, I forked it and then made my own thing with it, and then started tacking more and more features onto it. And then eventually it got to the point where like, okay, you don't want to just do a strip, you want to do a rectangular display, and you can specify the layout of the LEDs, and it handles all of that for you. Even handles things like draw a circle, draw a triangle, draw a square, draw, this image on there, even up to the point of somewhere in that code is a class for controlling a conical LED display. And basically by that, I mean a Christmas tree. So like I've got videos on the Maniacal Labs YouTube channel of like a Christmas tree where the entire surface of the tree is all calibrated so that it all acts together as one cohesive display. So it's not just like random around the tree, it's all together. So I can have like a spiral going up there
in the holiday season.
No, not even remotely. I'm not even putting up a tree this year.
No, I'm talking outside, right? Are all the neighbors like,
no,
just his idea is better than ours?
No, I don't do any of this stuff. It's just I don't have the time. I mean, I'm more the type to go, oh crap, it's Christmas tomorrow, I guess I should put some lights up. Which is why, like 7 years ago, my wife said to me one time, it'd be cool if we could have some lights up for when, like, that are like orange and purple or something for when the trick-or-treaters are here. So this was Halloween. And this was like,
just gave you permission for RGB LEDs on the house.
Right. Well, and she's like, yeah. And then like, it'd be kind of nice if we could have them where they just worked for whatever holiday we wanted. And this was like October 15th, so I had like 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, I had installed very simple. They're on the inside of my front porch. And they're actually they're like 12 volt LEDs. So each pixel is actually like 6 LEDs. So they're relatively wide, but it's easier to do, and you can do a long run of them because it's over 30 feet and I only have the power at one side.
Yeah.
And I have that where I could just like pull up my phone and be like, Halloween, and it does the thing.
I want to do this, but I also recognize that I'm going to go overboard and I should not be trusted to do this because it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. I mean, at this point though, and see, that's one of the things like I was saying before, how I kind of was at the front of waves of these things.
Yeah.
Now you can go to Walmart and just buy something that does that and has a better app. And
I don't know about a better app, but it has an app.
Okay. I mean, you have to remember, I am a software engineer who mostly has worked on back end, like, infrastructure stuff.
Right.
So an interface to me is a command line.
That's
or like, a REST API. I very rarely, and I did eventually with that animation library, write an actual like web interface to it where like, and at one point I had one that was all crazy. You could configure it from there and you could do all sorts of stuff. You could go from beginning to end with zero coding, but eventually for like later versions, because I had to drop support for that old one for various reasons, I had it where you could basically just define like a menu. So it'd be like Halloween, Christmas,
Oh,
New
that's
Year's,
so nice.
whatever.
Yeah.
So you could give it the animation. You basically just say this button fires this animation, and that was all you needed. But there was still coding involved. You had to write a JSON file, and it was the whole thing. But it was easier than literally what it used to be before. Is my wife would be like, "Hey, can you put it in Halloween mode?" I'd be like, "Hold on, let me SSH into the pie that's on the porch," and then I do that and fire the command to do the right thing.
I grew up in the 90s where I was too late to really get in on the bottom level of programming.
Mm-hmm.
And I was too new to get into the new type of programming. I actually never learned programming. It was never a class that I could take. It was never taught in school. And it's like, I look at this and I'm like, ugh. Like we just got contacted by a company. I'll shout them out. Whatever. They want me to review their product. Octo Everywhere. I've never heard of it, and I'm like, well, the reason I've never heard of it is because I don't know how to program Raspberry Pis. Right. The printer behind me runs a Pi, and it's doing an Octo lapse right now of a project that if I talked about, the person would probably come and hurt me. It is like, it's not under an NDA, but it's a very, very special thing that we're doing. And I'm so excited to talk about it, but I don't want to ruin the surprise for him. So, we're not going to talk about it, but like I had to bring on, little Justin Levy. Yeah. He was the one that did all the programming on the Pi. I'm like, I don't know how to, you want me to SSH? Shh. That's all that I know SSH to be. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
Putty.
Yeah.
I got silly putty. Is that what you want? I don't know any of these things. And I'm like, all right, look, I'm 85 years old. Talk to me like I'm your grandfather and you were trying to teach your grandfather to code. He's like, I can't do that. I said, great. Just remote into my computer and do it then. Because
that's funny.
It's like one of the things I wish, and I want to learn like Python so I can, be better at like using FreeCAD, or even like if I wanted to use OpenSCAD. I don't know how to use them because I don't know how to program.
OpenSCAD is a whole thing. And I mean, I'm both someone who lives in 3D modeling, like in my spare time. I mean, I'm constantly like, I don't do CAD modeling for like a living or for anything that I'm getting paid for, but I have a paid Fusion license. That's how much I use it.
Yeah.
And I am a programmer for nearly 20 years. I hate OpenSCAD because like, and I get it. There's somebody like, I get that for some people that is like the way that their brain understands those things. And like, I think the original Prusa Mark IIs and Mark I's were designed in SCAD, which is just insane to me. Cause like the best I think I've ever done was make like a bolt.
There was ever only one live stream that no longer exists on our channel. And it was the live stream where I attempted to learn FreeCAD without any prior knowledge. And let me tell you, I rage quit. That was the only time I've ever rage quit a live stream. I'm like, I am done. I'm killing this live stream. I'm deleting this video. It's gone.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
As a lover of open source, I adore the concept of FreeCAD, but it's people are going to be screaming, but it's a learning curve. It is more like a cliff.
Yes.
No, it's not. And
I felt like
hard to do.
Had I given myself a little bit of extra time, maybe not in front of a live audience, enough time to Google things and maybe communicate with the FreeCAD people, because I will say they're really good on Twitter. It is one of those things that I think I might be able to pick up. Yeah. But now, because I had a poor experience with it, I'm going to shelve it until I'm like ready mentally to take on that challenge once again.
As with anything, it was the same thing when I was first learning CAD, even with Fusion, or I mean, I started with like 1-2-3D design and like played with Tinkercad and stuff like that. But with like FreeCAD, especially, I think that's the kind of thing where you're like, okay, today I'm going to make a box with a hole in it. That's your only goal, something simple, and then just kind of build on that. But I don't really have the patience for it. And like, at least for me, Fusion was a little bit easier to just sort of jump into, and it was kind of more obvious how things worked. But like, I had to go through a little bit of that with another great open source piece of software, which is Kicad or or whatever the hell you want to call it. which I adore, and now is pretty polished. And I mean, a lot of people use it. Yeah, it's gotten better. But I used it back in like the 2.0 and 3.0 days, where it was a little janky. I mean, a lot janky. And there was a lot of things that just didn't necessarily make sense, especially coming from like, I had never designed circuit boards. So I had no, knowledge of what things were supposed to be, and just and that may have been what sort of tinted my view of it. Was I was trying to not only learn Kicad, but learn circuit boards in general. I've done breadboards and stuff. Yeah.
Had the same problems. I ended up like, we have electrical engineers on staff, and I'm like, hey, are you around? Do you want to come on a live stream with me? Like now? we use DJI Osmo Pockets on our standing set. This is a camcorder. It's more than fine. But on the main set, Osmo Pockets. Right. The problem with Osmo Pockets is that they're a pain in the ass to charge. They have charging cases that are unnecessarily over-engineered because DJI, and I don't want to carry them because they're unnecessarily over-engineered. So I said, I got an ammo can because they're dirt cheap and they're waterproof. I want to build a circuit board and I can just slot these cameras into it. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'm like, oh yeah, I could design this out in CAD. I can bring in the parts from McMaster or, from JLC. And then it's like, oh, okay, it's time to do the circuit board. Shit.
Yeah. I mean, like when I started on Kicad, it was back when they had the auto router, which was just like piping it out to freerouting.net and then back. And that was definitely the time where I learned truly the statement, never trust the auto router is.
What are some tips and
very
tricks
much true
for those that want to get into doing custom circuit boards and that kind of thing? Is there like, is it don't use Kicad, go to Eagle? Is it,
No, I would generally stay away from Eagle if you're just doing it for fun, mostly because it's not free. It's owned by Autodesk now. I mean, at least before you could kind of get like here's a funny story of actually how I got to using Kicad. This is when I first started Maniacal Labs with a friend of mine who's an actual electrical engineer and knows how to do this. But we needed to choose an EDA to build some new stuff in. And
what does EDA stand for?
Electronic Design Automation.
Okay. Sorry.
I think.
Never do.
It's fine. We needed to choose one, and we were looking at Eagle, and they did have a free version of it. But what we wanted to design was literally larger than the largest design you could do in the free version of Eagle. So Eagle was just out right from the beginning. And that pushed us to Kicad, which obviously, like I said, had its learning curves, especially in the earlier days. I mean, this was nearly a decade ago. But we kind of went on with it from there. And initially, my friend Dan, who I was working on this with, was the one that was doing all the design. I got into learning Kicad purely because I didn't want to just watch on the sidelines. I mean, I was like supposed to be the one doing the firmware.
That's where I was at.
But it was like, but that looks fun.
Yeah,
I want to do that.
I've watched our guys do it. I'm like, this honestly just looks like race cars, but for engineers, right? You're like just making the traces out, and then I got into it. I'm like, yep, this is exactly race cars for engineers with all the problems that race cars come with.
Yeah, well, race cars on like multiple dimensions that can't cross each other's paths ever.
Yeah, unless they're on different levels and stuff.
Yeah, and this was also like before there was great, 10-part YouTube series on how to do Kicad and how to do electronic design and all that stuff. I mean, I think if you're getting into it now, I mean, start with something that you find interesting, you want to do. At least for me, like I sucked in school where I had to be like, do this thing. Well, why? Well, because that's what the exercise is. I know, but what does it do? Like, I want an end goal. I have to have an end goal for the things that I'm learning.
I'm the same way, right?
I can't just dive in and be like, okay, I made the thing. So, start with something small. Like a friend of mine was recently building something where I found with circuit design, the best thing you can do, design something on a breadboard and then just make a permanent breadboard. So know really even passive components, no active components on the board itself, pretty much just its wires with headers you plug stuff into. So like a friend of mine was doing that recently. I was helping him through that. And it was literally just a little, like a board that held an ESP8266 board and a temperature sensor and an LED. And that was it. But he had a breadboard design. He just wanted to make it more permanent and something that he could like 3D print a case for.
Right.
And it's simple. It had like 10 traces. It was powered from the USB port on the ESP8266 board.
Nice.
It's just, I want to make this not be a nest of wires. And that's really, I think, one of the good places to start, because then the schematic's easy. You're not really worried about components. It's just, here's a header, draw some wires between them, and then I've got a board. And, you know, if you're designing that stuff, don't be shy to have them fabricated. It's cheap. It's so cheap. I mean, maybe not for everyone, but like, you know, Oshpark can do really cheap boards. And I hate to say it, but all of the Chinese companies that, you know, now do them can do them probably even cheaper. It kind of depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, like, well, a lot of those Chinese companies are also getting into 3D printing, so you can get your board plus your print. And I'm not even remotely worried about that becoming a problem in my life.
I really need to see if any of them will do SLS nylon prints, because there's sometimes things I've really wanted to be printed in SLS nylon.
I've got some guys that do SLS in the States for real affordable.
Okay, well, we'll need to talk about that later then. It's like things where like I don't really need it in SLS nylon, and I can print it in nylon or polycarbonate here. It's just not going to look as good.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I don't have SLS. I'm trying to get MJF in-house, but right now I have a local guy that does it, and he gives me really good rates. It has been tough because like we've got powder printers already. We've got full color sandstone, and not many people will understand the mess they make until you get one.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at like a 3D printing company, or even as a 3D printing hobbyist, and you want to go up to powder-based systems, it's similar to like Kicad, or similar to like OpenSCAD, vertical cliff.
Yeah,
vertical
learning curve
of issues. It becomes things like, oh, I must have negative pressure in the room, or everything is going to be covered in white powder. Everything. And as funny as it is to like go through and make it look like you're just wiping cocaine off a table, that's very expensive powder that's now going on the floor, and you're also now breathing it.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone has seen Twitter in the past 72 hours, everyone has finally caught on to the problems that aerosolizing 3D printing resin is.
Grant, but I heard that breathing in UV resin is fine.
Oh, my good man. Resin is toxic. I need a button. I need like a Steam Deck with a button that puts it on my screen. Resin is
toxic. Yeah.
It's so bad.
Well, and actually, I mean, as you know, I had a resin printer, and the operative word being had.
Yep.
And I know that I could have made it work for me, but it's just one of those where in the end, it was all of those other things that just ended up not being worth it to me. The mess, just dealing with the resin, dealing with the smell of the resin. It really had to be out in my garage, which is not as convenient for me.
Yep.
As you can see, I have all of my printers here. That's a lot easier. I mean, it's probably not great for me to be breathing in whatever's coming off of these, but I'm not as worried about that. That's definitely one of those points of contention. I know some people are like, no, you have to have all sorts of filtration. Just like, whatever. It's fine.
We have VOC filters. But I also have 11 resin 3D printers quite literally right next to me. Like, I can reach up and
touch one. Yeah.
Literally reach up and tap on it. They're that close. I can grab full bottles of resin right from a shelf. Like, full bottles of resin.
Oh, geez.
It's unopened.
That's fair. That's fair.
Still factory sealed.
In the end with mine, I have a good friend who's really into like tabletop gaming miniatures and painting them.
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of those where like I kept talking to him about it, and he was thinking about getting a resin printer. And finally it was like, look, do you want this one? I will give you a deal. I would rather someone use it. It's just not going to be me. And the funny thing is, like 2 months after I got it to him, I got a picture from him. He's like, so I bought some more resin, and it was a 5-liter jug.
That's a lot.
He goes through it a lot. And we have a lot of friends who are also into tabletop gaming miniatures. So it's like, he'll still make some money off of them, but they're able to get miniatures printed from him for a hell of a lot cheaper than like buying them online, where they're $10-20 a piece instead of $5.
You can get them printed at us for less than you can buy them online for, and I'm making a profit on that.
Right. And that's the way he was usually doing it is like, okay, it's 10 times material cost or something, because the material does technically cost that much.
Yeah, it's like $40
and, it doesn't take that
a
much.
liter for the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive. And yeah, he was using like pretty much only Soraya Tech. I think usually it was like a 80-20 fast and tenacious, just to make them a little.
Those are good numbers. Those are all good numbers.
which is one of the reasons why he wanted to buy the, or maybe, because I think it was with the 5-liter thing. He then bought a liter bottle of tenacious and then did half of it into each of the 5-gallon things.
Damn it, that's actually smart. I didn't think about that. I've got a notepad sitting by my resin with all the different doping methods we've used, because I've been messing around with doping resin, because the one problem with 3D resin outside, and let's ignore the toxicity for a minute, but it is making sure the parts don't freaking break, right? And you can dope 50% tenacious, and if you're still acting like a fool, it's gonna snap. So we found a little bit of tough, some tenacious, some fast, and some other 11 herbs and spices tend to give us like a really, really good mixture.
Yeah.
But boy, howdy does it separate from solution.
Yeah, because they don't necessarily want to stay mixed. You gotta keep them mixed up and all of that. It's funny to me how much resin is still behind FDM or FFF or whatever you want to call it, enough that it's like we're back in those early days of where now, instead of companies are playing with the chemistry of the filament, it's the users themselves are playing with the chemistry of like the resin mixes that they're using.
Back in the day too?
I did not.
No.
We thought about it. Like for a while, I was like, oh, like recycle all my old prints, and then it was just like, whatever. It's not.
It was never about recycling the prints for me. It was always about making my own blended filament. Yeah. And then I remember I had a business that had a powder printer in it, and I could never get clean filament. Like we would clog the filter inside the filter almost instantly, so we had to always cut them out. And,
oh jeez.
Yep.
Oh, just because like powder was getting into
it. Yeah, and there was no way to stop it. Like there was physically, like I had that room under heavy negative pressure, like pharmaceutical grade fume hood levels of negative pressure, and it would still find its way out, and it would find its way into my damn prints. And then we had a shop cat, and the shop cat didn't help things out at all. So
I've definitely pulled a few cat hair clogs out of printers I've had where like hair got onto the filament as it fed into the machine.
That's a bonus of working with us. Every print comes with complimentary cat hair. Mind you, she sheds very little. Like, I've never had a cat that shed this little, but I've got the stunt double because she's off doing important cat things, but I would be lying if there's not cat hair in this bed. It's a thing.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm used to seeing the cat there on the Friday calls.
Yes. Quilon 1 says, sounds like cyberpunk drugs, fast, tenacious, etc. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
This is true. I could see someone like, you got any of that tenacious?
I do like their naming scheme, but then there's like cast. Like, could you not come up with a cooler name for your casting resin?
Isn't that the dental one?
No, it's their casting resin.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was for like making like dental casts.
It's also
something.
Bright purple.
Because why not?
I don't know, man. It's bright purple, and I've got good settings to finally print it.
I wonder if they're doing that because a lot of times like the casting silicone is 2 parts, and it's usually blue and red.
I don't know. Because
maybe
you can go straight into coating this in the ceramic slip media and burning it out because it burns out cleanly. You don't need to do silicone anymore. If you're gonna do
That's cool.
silicone, get it in regular resin. There's no point in doing it because casting resin's crazy fragile.
This reminds. Have you ever seen the YouTube channel Robinson Foundry?
No.
So he hasn't done a video in a little while, and it's one of those channels that's not overly subscribed to, and I mean, I think it's got a decent number of subscribers, but not like into the millions. And he does videos when he feels like it, but he's been doing a lot of experimentation with lost PLA casting.
Okay.
And like he did some where what was it? There was the 3D printed design going around for the bolt that you could have nuts that would go opposite directions.
Yeah.
On. So he actually cast that in bronze.
Was he the guy that did that?
Yeah.
Okay, I looked up Robinson Studio. Is that what you said?
No, Robinson Foundry.
Robinson Foundry. Okay, because Robinson Studio is a painting YouTuber.
No.
I'm like, this isn't the right one.
No, and he's done some crazy stuff like doing castings of the inside of shells or castings of like monkey skulls and stuff like that.
That
but
Impossible has 16 million views.
Okay, some of his have gone very viral. I'm not saying he's not well known. It's just lesser.
160K subscribers. Yeah, that's not a ton.
Okay. Yeah. But he's done some interesting stuff, and I just always fascinating watching the process of like taking the PLA, coating it in like multiple coatings of this like stuff that ends up turning into a ceramic when you bake it, and then burning the just black sludge of PLA out of it in the kiln and stuff.
I'm gonna send that to some of our clients. We have a bunch of jewelry clients, and everyone is. It's funny because they're competitors with each other, but they've all agreed to work together to figure out the best methods for burnout.
Oh, interesting.
I said, you want the best method for burnout? Work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. That's the best method I got for burnout.
Yes.
None of them find that hilarious. I think it's hilarious.
As a programmer where burnout is a real frickin' thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, as anyone that takes a hobby seriously, that tries to make it a business, you find very quickly that burnout is the easiest way to kill a hobby. Is the easiest way.
Yeah. See, so I'm kind of curious about that, like with you, because obviously this is something that seems like, I mean, I don't know what you did before this, aside from the giant shop you made, but it sounds like this is kind of somewhat hobby, that you do for a business thing. Or for like me, I've had lots of people say to me, well, why don't you do stuff with your lasers and make a business out of it, or with the 3D printers and all of that stuff? And I have avoided it like nothing else, because I feel like the second I do, it's not going to be fun anymore.
I will admit that I don't do a lot of personal printing anymore, because a lot of the desire for it is gone, right? Because I have 33 3D printers. Okay, like that is a lot of machines. 11 of them are resin.
Wow.
I think 20 of them are FDM. And then there's one full color, which is for sale. If someone wants a full color sandstone printer, hit me up. It will cost more than 10 grand, like considerably more than 10 grand. The machine weighs 900 pounds empty, and it's going to come with enough material to run for about a month straight.
Wow.
So if you want one, hit me up. They're $70,000 brand new without material. So this is the deal I'm giving here is pretty good. And I'm one of the few people that know how to use them. And then there's other printer that I don't want to talk about right now. But yes, I started in this hobby in 2008 with the RepRap project, building printers from scratch, right?
Yeah.
I had a personal need to take ideas and make them real, and I was in college at the time, so a fully functioning wood shop wasn't a thing. I have 2 business degrees, so I went for business. I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't want $200,000 in debt. So I went with the next best thing. Learn how to run your own business, and then work with engineers and play engineer. And to this day, I think I've had 1 or 2 people question my background.
Okay.
They're like, what did you get your degrees in? I'm like, business? Wait, you're not an engineer? No. I still keep a caliper on my desk. I still know how to do all this stuff. But, I'm just not certified. I know what I'm doing. We have certified people when we need the certified people. But, Yeah, this did kind of start as a hobby.
Yeah.
I worked at a local science museum and saw people waiting hours for 3D prints. I said, wait a minute. If they're going to wait hours to get something for free, how long would they wait to get it for if they had to pay for it? And the answer is not very long. And that's why we have a lot of printers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to have the capacity there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got not 33 printers, but I have 6 now. And like, I've had more than that at certain times. But it's like, I'm not running them all day, all the time.
No.
I'm not even necessarily running any of them every day.
There are some days like that. Yep.
Yeah, but there are some times where it's like, oh, I need how many parts by Tuesday? Okay. Well, they're all in service.
Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why I have like multiples of some of the same printers, because then like if I need multiples of parts, then I slice the G code once and split it up between them, and I don't have to keep dicking around with that.
Yep.
Like, I love my minis. I love my Mark IIIs. I kind of wish they were 4 of the same.
I have 4 minis and I have 8 Mark III's. Yeah, those are 12 of the 20 printers are Prusa's.
Jesus. I mean, hilariously, they're great.
2 of my 4 minis are still in the box. I had them for almost a year. I haven't opened them.
Oh my God.
Wow. I bought them Black Friday of last year. They didn't show up until February of this year.
Yeah.
So like by that point, my need for them had waned. And for the price that I got them for the fact that I paid a great price, got them free shipping and all that, they can sit in the box. They're inventory at this point.
Yeah. Spares, whatever.
Exactly.
When you need them, you just put them into service and you're good to go.
The plan is eventually to enclose the shelf over there and utilize. I'm working on a product to make the enclosures functional. Have 2 minis, 2 Mark III's here, 2 minis and 2 Mark III's over there.
Nice.
And so we have 4 open air, 4 enclosed, and then the other 4 Mark III's mixed throughout the rooms.
Yeah, just wherever you can put them. Yeah, I mean, I'm even at the point like where, you know, I'm kind of a crazy person, and in my own home office, I have actually had 3 20 amp circuits installed because I was running out of power budget for all of this stuff.
And I'm surprised that I haven't hit that yet. Well, okay, the amount of times that every printer is on and running is literally 0. It has never happened that I've needed every single machine because resin. Because the resin printers, even if they're all on at the same time.
And that's very low power. Yeah.
And they're like maybe 35, 40 watts each.
Okay. Yeah. Like 100 at most if you're really, I think because I had a Photon Mono X and I think I maybe clocked it at like 90.
Okay.
Like when it was exposing. And that was like, and
like they supposed for 2.5 seconds.
I had built in a heater to it so that it would heat the chamber. So that was partly why I was thinking that. But yeah, part of it is like the tool changer here is an AC bed, and I think it's like 800 watts.
Yep.
And then I've sold it since, but I had a FormBot that was a 400 by 400 by 500 millimeter.
It's a big girl.
Like bed slinger. Yeah.
Oof.
That had a 900 watt heated bed. It made the lights flicker in my office when it was heating. Just kind of, you know, doing that. So it was things like that. And then I've got another machine I'm working on now, which is a 750, 800 watt heated bed. You know, AC bed. So like that will, I've even been tempted to, just because I can, build in 2 power inlets, one for the bed, one for everything else, so that I could put it on a different circuit.
That's what we
like
have
the
on
bed itself on a different circuit. Yeah.
We built
just
a big ass D-bot. It's literally named the big ass D-bot. It's 400 by 400 by 788.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was only $65 of extra parts, double the Z-axis. What could go wrong? Oh my God, the damn! I have to like bolt it to a wall basically to keep it from shaking. It's so bad.
Oh my God.
We built a new Z-axis for it with a 1605 ball screw and a pair of SBR 12 linear rails. So the Z-axis weighs more than the entire printer.
Oh my God, that's insane.
It's a 45-pound Z-axis.
Big printing is kind of one of those crazy things where, like, because the FormBot was large and I didn't really use it a ton, and I actually the printer that I'm working on now, originally the plan for it was to be a 500 millimeter cube print volume.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny how it's like you can go from something like my Daedalus, which is, rail core sized. I mean, it literally uses a rail core bed. And like you can buy a bed for that and it's like $100.
Right.
For a Mike 6 milled aluminum plate bed. I was looking into getting Mandela Roseworks to make me a 500 millimeter mag bed, and it was going to be like $400. And that was not including the 1600 watt heater that I expect from Kenovo. So their AC 500 millimeter square heater is 1600 watts. That definitely was going to need a second power inlet.
Now we just want those beds from Prusa. We want that modular Prusa bed system.
Which is a brilliant idea. I mean, I like what they did with that. That was a really cool. I mean, although there's like so many cables up under the bed for that. Like that definitely added some complexity to it.
Yeah, and someone brought up a point when we were, because of course we're going to talk about the XL all the damn time. What do we think is going to be the failure rate on those beds? Because now all of a sudden every printer has 16. So if you had a 1% failure,
I thought it was 9.
Is it? I thought it was 4x4.
Whatever. I don't know. What do I know?
My math is, it's 36. It's 360 by 360. So it was 90 each. Yeah, it is. It's 16. It's 4x4.
Okay. Fair.
So if it was a 1% failure mode, that like out of all the Mark III S's, 1% of the beds failed. Maybe they broke in shipping or they didn't test well. 1% equates to way higher numbers on printers.
Right.
But makes it easier to ship a bed as far as I'm concerned. Because
you're not shipping a huge thing. You just ship a little bit and it's not a big deal.
We've got a 410 millimeter Mix 6 square plate for our big D-Bot. And the hardest thing for me was, how the hell do you mount something like this?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't have bolts sitting proud. So I had to countersink M3 hardware to line everything up. And then it sits on M5 studs. So the M3 lines it up and then it sits onto M5 studs. So the M3 keeps it from moving around. The M5 transfers the weight.
Yeah.
It seems to work well, but it's like because I only ended up with a 1/4 inch thick plate because I didn't want to take 6 hours. And we have a 700 watt heater on it. It is not a Kenovo. It's some generic eBay. Because that printer was built with a budget in mind, and that budget was way too low. It started out as Bowden, and I want to let you know a 700 millimeter log Bowden tube is a waste of everybody's time and should not exist.
That's what the tool changer was stock before the Chimeras.
700 millimeters?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't work all that well.
No, this is why I never use tools 2 and 3. I only ever use 0 and 1 because they're Chimeras. And this is why it's sitting here, because I'm currently working on it.
Yeah. So, if and of course this does go out audio only later on, but for those that are watching us live, that printer is on a Lazy Susan, which is freaking brilliant. I've seen Jordan of Mad Monkey Makes do it, and I said, nope, I gotta do it. To be able to spin the printer. It'd be so much easier in videos to do that, to just spin it, then spin it back to the camera. We wouldn't have to make cuts every time I'm trying to figure out what the hell's on the screen.
Yeah, I did that a couple years ago when I was starting to work on some really, really big projects. Although I've got, I don't know, it's out of frame. It's kind of over here in the corner. You can see the blue tape and the white.
Yeah.
It's a plotter that I built, and so this is the funny thing. I have a problem with CAD is I don't very often have a sense of how big something is, basically just by the numbers.
Yep. And
my original plan for that was I want a 1 meter square working area. That's not bad. Yeah, it's enormous.
Bend when they're that long.
Well, yeah.
Aluminum rails bend.
Right. So I ended up with an 800 millimeter square working area.
Okay.
And basically almost every rail on the machine is 1 meter. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you're right. I originally had a 2020 rail going across it. The frame was 2040.
Yep.
But the x-axis was a 2020 rail, and it visibly drooped in the middle, even without that much weight on it, because I mean it's literally just a pen plotter, although it's set up where you can put other tools and stuff on it. Like I have a laser head for it and I have an airbrush for it and
of course
stuff
you have
like
a
that.
laser head for it.
I have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing, the base on it is I think 45 inches square. It's just like 3/4 inch plywood that everything's bolted down to. And part of the reason why I have it on that is originally like I designed it where it didn't necessarily need a base.
You wanted
I could
to wall
just
hang it.
Yeah, I could. Well, yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Or I could just stick it on this table behind me, which is a 4x6 foot table.
Mm-hmm.
And I overbuilt it, but so it didn't weigh anything. But the y-axis is two 1.4 Newton meter NEMA 23 motors, 2 of them with 12 millimeter belts. And when I was first testing it, I was sitting at the table.
It's gonna shake itself apart.
And I hit a button to have it just move forward, and I had added an extra 0 to the speed on the movement, and it moved forward and stopped so hard that the machine hit me in the chest. It moved like 1.5 feet off the table and just rammed right into me.
I've been there before. There before.
I run into things like that where it's like, oh, and this is going back to when I was talking about building the 500 millimeter cube printer. Part of why I wanted to build this was just for something fun to bring to Murph, if that happens this year. And I realized quickly it wouldn't fit out the door of my office.
Yep.
Because it was going to be at least like 800 millimeters cubed as for the whole printer, and my door is a little bit narrow.
Yep.
It's only 750. So I've had to scale down to something a little more tenable. Although that one ends up, I think it's 900 by 950 by 500.
This is why I have a 500 by 700 millimeter laser. It is the largest laser that fits through a standard man door.
Right. Yeah.
And it's so close. You have to remove the grounding lugs from it. You have to unplug everything, because even a power cord sticking out the back of it, not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough. It won't fit. Because we bought it when we had a retail business, because we found that 3D printing was too slow. Nobody would wait for their parts, and they didn't want to come back to the mall. They wanted it to be shipped, and they didn't want to pay for shipping. So I said, all right, let me get a laser so I can get things like, 20 minutes, you're in and out, and you can watch the damn thing burn it the whole time. 3 months later, they pulled the lease because they had a permanent tenant for the space.
Fun.
Okay, fine. 6 months later, everything happens in the world, and I don't really regret any of that. So it's fine.
For sure. That would have been bad to have a retail space still. So
it was a lot of money that I don't have an overhead anymore. But I went from 2,000 square feet to a 170 square foot office plus whatever of the garage I can muster. And I do kind of eke out into the living room every now and then, and people are like, no, office. I'm like, but there's no space. It is 10 feet wide in here. And
oh, wow.
These are 2 foot wide shelves here and here. The same shelves that are there is my desk.
Oh, nice.
Because what do you do? It's exactly what you do in places where it's high density. You go vertical.
I mean,
you did the same thing.
That's why the printers are there. The closet behind me is it's funny. It's a closet, but for whatever reason, there's a desk in it. I don't know why. And I can't get it out because the idiot that put it in, the previous owner, I think it was put in with like construction adhesive and screws.
It'll probably rip.
So like I took all the screws out and it won't come out because I was going to build my own shelves into it or whatever. So the tool changer and my Daedalus sits on that normally. But yeah, as a maker, consistent lack of space is always a thing.
Well, and the YouTube channel did not help this out, because I turned part of my garage now into a standing set. My desk now has to have hanging lights on it, where the shelf used to be a lot lower and I had filament stacked on it. Now the shelf is like right at the top. We have hanging lights so I can have all the the proper lighting and things. And now there's a microphone boom arm that gets it. It is one of those things like, all right. Yeah. And of course everything suffers from the flat surface law. Right. Everything that's not being used is now, storage.
I mean, my office when we first moved into this house used to also be sort of like the home theater room. I had big TV in here. I had literal theater chairs. Not like the big comfy, like cushy ones, but like ones from a 1920s theater that were red velvet covered.
Nice.
I had those, and now instead, like the TV's back downstairs now, and like the wall over to my right here is I don't know what, 15 feet of 2-foot deep U-line wire shelving.
Similar to this. Yeah, this is all from Sam's. I love the ones from Sam's. Chris.45 says a 20-pound hammer does wonders to construction adhesive, and I have to agree. It might ruin the drywall too.
Right. So one of the bathrooms is on the other side of that, and
water pipes.
Yeah. So I probably will get to the point where I'm literally just ripping out the drywall, and that's what I'd have to do. Is I would have to completely gut the drywall from that closet.
Yep.
And then do it. I've actually now seen the other side of that drywall because we recently had the bathroom redone, which was fun. I was in here printing something, and they were cutting through the old tub because it was one of those old fiberglass inserts, and hit the power line.
No.
I just heard a pop, and the power in my office went out, and I ran it. What?
You knew what happened.
Yeah, I knew immediately what happened because I could hear the reciprocating saw, and I immediately went in there, and it took me a second to get the guy's attention, but it was just because he was listening to music and he couldn't hear me. And he's like, "What?" I was like, "I was just making sure you're still alive." He's like, "Oh yeah, it's fine." I was a little bit annoyed with that because I feel like if I had because he knew he had gone through the thing. I mean, he saw the flash from it.
Yeah.
But I would have been at least gone and checked on the owners of the house, like, hey, maybe. And it was fine. It was easy enough for them to fix. But it was just one of those where they had run the power line slack behind the tub for
that makes
reasons
total
I don't.
sense.
Yeah, obviously.
Total
this house
sense.
is wired really, really weirdly.
This one too. There's no door. It's just a mudroom in Florida. Why do we have a mudroom in Florida? There's no door. I had to hang curtains. But hey, you know what? It's one of those, you got to work with what you got. And we were expecting to expand into like a building, whether it's on this property or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Then I had my back injury. So, all right, we're still here. And the YouTube channel has kind of changed all of that for me because I really love creating content. I love talking to people like you. I would have never met you had it not been, well, it had nothing to do with the YouTube channel because I met you before I started the channel, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the channel. The channel started in March of this year. We met.
It was around there. I guess it was before that. It was Matt's.
I was on the Friday calls before the channel started. Let's
go
with that.
I was not. Yeah, I was not.
Just because you don't show up, does it? You should show up. It's fun.
I try to. I do.
I know. We all have things to do.
I didn't for quite a while. Yeah, life got busy for lots of reasons.
Well, and then Justin the Elder's on there, and the two of you can yell at each other. Sometimes Joe comes on, and half the LightBurn guys are on that call.
It is always funny when we get on it. I swear that I was joking with, it was either Joe or Justin, both LightBurn people, the other day about whenever we get on there, I kind of feel bad because it always ends up being that we just get into lots of laser conversation.
But there's a lot of laser people on there, and I think that's
and I'm not trying to control the conversation and be talk about me, it's lasers, it's fun, but I think people just start asking questions. Granted, it's been a while since I've been in there and anyone has then directly messaged me through the Zoom chat saying, hey, so I've been having this problem with LightBurn. We have forums for this.
I think it's the same reason that no one bothers, because a lot of us have ways to reach we could DM Joe Prusa or DM Mikolas or DM Matt. We don't do that because there are right ways to do it. Right. If it is something where, all right, you put something out there, a couple of weeks later you got nothing back, all right, fine. At that point, hey, did you get this thing? Right.
Totally.
But that's also what I love about this community is that, I love LightBurn talk because it profoundly changed the way that I used my laser, right? Russ from the RD Works Learning Lab. Everyone knows him. If you have a cheap laser, you know Russ. And if it wasn't for Russ, I wouldn't have owned a cheap laser. And if it wasn't for LightBurn, I would not still have that cheap laser.
Yeah.
Because RDWorks is the worst. That's not the worst. Chi2Box is probably the worst program I've ever used. But RDWorks is up there with some of the worst program I have ever used, where it will crash. It will have random jargon on the screen that has no valid, in any way, shape, or form translation to anything that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And it just crashes. Because screw you, that's why. And LightBurn has its quirks. There are some odd things that I like.
For sure.
I have to put a square in the top corner, otherwise it moves my origin to the top corner of the part. And no, I want some buffer space around my part. Right? Those are some of the little quirks. I'm like, that's fine. That's an easy thing to do. I have it set, so as soon as I load it, that green square comes in with a little macro. Life is easy.
Yep.
But you learn to work with those little nuances. And whereas RDWorks has had basically no updates ever, you guys are putting out updates at least once a quarter. And these are not like small updates. These are pretty serious updates.
Yeah, we try to. The funny thing of it is our updates have almost slowed since we got more developers. And I think it's partly because we're a little bit more ambitious with what we do.
It's fair.
Like, we have the dev time to do some interesting things. Whereas before, we would, instead of waiting for 10 new features to put in a new version, we'd kind of wait for 1 or 2, and we just would push them out constantly.
A system that I really like is the way that Lychee Slicer does it. Lychee has a Discord, and they release private betas in the Discord. So if you're in their Discord and you want to help beta test, you can go download it all day long, but it's not a general public known thing.
Yeah.
So that small little changes can be validated by multiple users before it goes out into the real world.
We have betas too.
Do you now?
Mm-hmm.
I got to see how I get on those. Because I seriously, and I would do a testimonial. There are so many videos of me saying this, that LightBurn has made laser cutting easy. It has sincerely made it easy. And for anyone that has never used RDWorks and only used LightBurn, go use RDWorks for a week, and then you'll know how truly gifted you are and special it is to have this software that is so abysmally affordable.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about going and using RDWorks for a week. So for reasons that have totally nothing to do with LightBurn, and I won't talk about, I have a Galvo laser that I just got. And
they show up, it happens.
They appear.
Yeah.
If
anyone wants to have one appear at my doorstep, I'll give you my address.
I intentionally, when I first got it, I just used EasyCAD, which is like the software that comes for it, so that I could feel the pain. Like, I intentionally wanted to internalize the pain and agony of using EasyCAD so that I could make the, whatever we're maybe working on a thing and make it better. Yeah. As I said to you before we started recording, we are investigating Galvos. We have no ETA.
I mean,
that's all I'm going to say about that.
It literally makes sense, right? If people are sitting here saying, well, I wonder why a guy at LightBurn has a Galvo laser. If you have to ask yourself that question, there might be some things that we need to talk about, because there are reasons for these things.
We have had people hounding us for fiber support, and I'll throw this out here real quick. Fiber's the laser source. Galvo is the laser.
Yes.
Like, motion system.
Yeah, you guys support fiber lasers already.
Yes, because like there are lasers that have not even just a fiber source, but a CO2 and a fiber source.
So we have a Trotec dealer locally, which is so weird because I live in the middle of nowhere, Florida, and there's one there even further in the middle of nowhere, Florida, and they're like, oh yeah, look, this machine's got both.
Yeah,
I'm like, but it's like $90,000.
They're really expensive machines. Yeah, and we've
$90,000.
seen some cheaper ones. There's also RF lasers, which are basically just RF excited CO2 instead of the electrically excited
voltage,
CO2 tubes.
like 24,000 volts or something stupid.
Yeah, they're usually between 18 and 26 kilovolts, depending upon what amperage you're running at and what size tube. But yeah, so Galvo is the type where it's moving mirrors instead of a moving lens, or mirrors that are angling themselves is what I'm getting at.
A Galvo is generally a pair of mirrors that are servo controlled that can move incredibly fast, incredibly accurately, with accelerations well exceeding what would kill any human. Like,
right, because they don't weigh
thousands of G's of acceleration.
Right, because they don't weigh anything. And like my Aeon Mirror 7 can accelerate at I think 2G.
Yeah.
Which is a lot for a gantry laser. Although the funny thing is, you say they're servo controlled. Not really.
The Aeon, I don't know if the Aeons
are. Not the servo, Galvos.
Oh, Galvos.
Galvos are, so a while ago, this was
servos.
There are some that are kind of into that realm.
Okay.
And they're servo in a sense. I'll explain. And this is I'm just going to nerd out because I truly love these things.
This podcast is about, my dude. Let's nerd out.
Before I shut down Maniacal Labs, because we ended it at the end of 2020 for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
One of the things that we were working on was a galvanometer control board. Because you can buy for like $50-$60 a cheap Galvo unit.
Yep.
And it basically comes with two little control boards, one for each galvanometer, which is the thing that moves the mirrors, and then a power supply. The hard part is making the control signals that control the galvanometers.
Right.
That actually move them. And the reason why it's freaking hard is because it uses a -15 to 15 volt analog signal.
Oh my gosh, it's not a servo, it's literally like a DC motor.
Yeah. Now, it's a servo in the sense that it does have feedback.
Yeah, it's got like a Hall effect or something.
Right.
Yeah.
It's closed loop. There's a Hall effect or some kind of sensor in there. So when you tell it to go to a spot, it's making sure it's reaching that.
Yeah.
But we had to do all sorts of crazy stuff with op amps and whatnot to generate a -15 to 15 volt output signal.
Yeah, no thanks.
To make it so basically 0 volts is like the mirrors in the middle,
right?
And then 15 and -15. And even these higher end, like much higher speed Galvo units basically use the same thing. I was looking into them, and the output signal is -15 to +15. It's kind of a standard, and you can even, it's like, I can't remember what it's called. There's like a standard like test pattern. It's like LIDA or light something, I don't remember, that was from like 70s and 80s era Galvo based laser light show devices.
And that's where a lot of us know Galvos from. It's like, the things that draw on smoke or on a wall or something like that for laser light shows.
Right. So those are Galvo based. Yeah. I mean, technically you can even buy laser based like movie projectors that are effectively Galvo based. Although
crazy money.
They use a sort of different system. A lot of times they'll just use a spinning mirror because they're only ever scanning. Well, so they'll have like a cubic mirror on a motor.
Isn't like a DLP system effectively just a shitload of Galvos? Because those mirrors are all individually controllable.
Yeah, kind of.
That's ish. I have 2 business degrees. It starts and ends at I know how DLP works.
Right. You're right. It is a lot of mirrors to guide the light, but like with a Galvo, you're talking basically one single beam path. Yeah. That then scans.
And fiber makes all the cool noises that CO2 doesn't. Honestly, that's like half the reason I want a fiber laser. Me.
Yeah, which is fun too, because I used to think that the sound was from the mirrors, but it's not. It's from the laser ablating material.
It's literally the ablating thing. And I've always wondered with fibers, because I know reflections are a massive problem in CO2. And CO2 lasers have enclosures. Most of the fibers that I see that are, let's go with under 50 grand, are open air.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same kind of concern?
I mean, yeah. That's why I have these sitting here.
Yeah. Laser safety glasses for those that weren't paying attention.
Yeah. So these are your like 800 to 1064 nanometer things. I don't know honestly, I assume it's still very bad to get it in your eye.
Yeah.
I think part of the difference with it is that with a CO2 laser, it's at a wavelength, and oddly enough, they're actually both IR. It's just IR is a really wide band.
Of course.
It's like from 700 nanometer all the way up to 1 millimeter in wavelength, which is
millimeter wavelength.
Yeah, it's freaking huge in wavelength terms. But CO2 lasers work better, obviously, with like organic material that it absorbs it, but with metal, it reflects it.
Yeah,
which is the problem.
The metal absorbs all the heat, and nothing happens.
Right. Whereas with a fiber laser, it's a lower wavelength, higher frequency, and the metal actually absorbs it. So I think it's less likely to reflect it. I probably should build an enclosure for it at some point. Right now, I'm just going with the safety goggles, just so I don't, burn my eyes out. And
like, that's the business model to me. And so like I'm wanting to get some affordable fiber lasers. Hopefully I can get the companies to just send them. That'd be great. Because I don't want to spend like 10 G's on a few different fiber lasers and look at building enclosures for them. Because it is the same reason why I think diode lasers that fit on a 3D printers, or diode lasers that fit onto plotters, are some of the most dangerous tools. I would take someone getting a resin 3D printer for the first time that doesn't know how to use it over someone getting a diode laser for the first time that doesn't know how to use it. Because one of them is a permanent, life-changing problem, and the other one is just chemical burns.
In theory, yeah, eventually you could become allergic to the resin after a while.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah. So yeah, the diode laser thing is a bit of a pet peeve with me. So like one of the projects, I can't remember if I mentioned this before we started recording or after, was the Engravinator, which is, my tiny little...
I think it was before, but yeah.
Before. So open source, tiny little 130 millimeter square working area diode laser engraver. Yep. But one of the big things with it, and that was a lot of the projects that I've done, especially in the last few years, have happened not because I had an idea, but because a friend of mine came to me and said, hey, I want to do this. Does something like this exist? And then oftentimes the answer is no, but I could do that. Let's see what happens. So the Engravinator was...
Those are my favorite. No, it doesn't exist, but screw it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So a friend of mine came to me who's a woodworker, and he basically said, I want to be able to engrave my maker's mark or something custom, dedication, whatever, on stuff I build. The problem of it is, he's like, I looked into getting a proper laser, but unless I want to spend $20,000, I can't fit the thing in there.
Right.
Or I can't fit it in it anyways because it's a chair or something, just... It was a non-normal
sized object.
Right. So he's like, I want something that I can just set on top of the thing I want to engrave, potentially even, clamp to it, and then it'll just engrave. And also he has 2 young kids, so he wanted it to be completely enclosed. And this was really before diode lasers flooded the market, because now you've got your Ortors and your NAJ and what...
JTEX, I think, are the other ones.
Yeah,
right?
Atom Stack and Snap Makers and all of those. They really weren't a ton on the market at the time.
Right.
So you couldn't even get one that wasn't enclosed, at least not easily, or it was relatively expensive. So I started playing around with that, designed it. Most of the parts are either 3D printed or just aluminum extrusion. It's kind of a little cube, and it's completely enclosed. I actually did a bunch of research into the acrylic for it. Okay. The funny thing is, you can buy certified safety acrylic for diode lasers, but it's 5-10 times the cost. But what I found is, at least for diodes, and mind you, this is just my research, I'm not an expert on it.
Yeah. Your mileage may vary. We are not experts. This word is, disclaimers, lawyer stuff. Do it at your own damn risk.
Right. But what I found is, typically the orange acrylic that you use for that is 2422 amber. It's 3 mil acrylic. The only real difference from what you can buy from your local or online supplier and what you get from JTEC, which has certified panels, is it's certified
the sticker
for
certification
that batch. So I kind of went with the opinion of, look, you're still using it at your own risk, but these are the panels that I have for it, because we tried doing kits for it for a little bit. In general, it seems safe. I've actually like fired the laser at it and it didn't burn the thing behind it. Stuff like that. I did some basic tests with it. So the entire thing's enclosed in the orange acrylic and whatnot. Unlike, a lot of the ones you find today, which are just out in the open, and you're just a reflection away from a bad eye problem.
Something that I've always found interesting, and because I've got quite a few Elegoo Marses, and they're of varying age ranges. Elegoo changed their cover from a multi-piece cover to a single piece, maybe it's 2-piece injection molded cover.
Right.
They changed their acrylic. It is no longer UV. It doesn't stop the UV anymore. I have a UV laser, like a handheld UV laser that I used to do very dedicated curing. Through the old things, I can shine the UV laser and I see nothing on the other side. Nothing. Yeah. Zero. On the newer enclosures, and I've had these machines for a while. Okay, these are like my newest Elegoo Mars. These are OG Marses, not monos. No, they're LCD Marses. As they break, I get rid of them. The newest one's probably a year and a half old. Right. The newer ones, I can see blue on the wall from the other side of it.
That's unfortunate.
It's not anywhere near as bright, so it's stopping most of the light. The covers for the Saturn are the same way. The covers for the Photon Mono X are the same way. It does not stop all of the laser. Now, the laser might be a little bit outside of the 405 nanometer spectrum.
Right.
But the original covers did stop it. So
which I feel like you want a buffer there. I mean, like, for example, just in terms of blocking UV, I built a new cover for that Photon Mono X that I had because I wanted to be able to heat the chamber, because it was going to be out in my garage, which is not really temperature controlled.
Right.
So I wanted to be able to like have the chamber up to like 30C and print it with that. Well, so I had to replace the yellow acrylic cover or whatever they had with my own, and it was all 3D printed frame. And then
I remember some of those, you laser cut a door so it could open as a door, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't have to pull the whole thing off. And actually, it wasn't even like a hinge. It was just on magnets. You just pop it off and set it aside. But anyways, I did a test before I did that to make sure that acrylic would actually block UV. And I did it by taking 2 little plastic containers and pouring Tech Fast resin into them. I covered one with clear acrylic. I covered one with the amber acrylic that I had. And then I stuck them out in the noonday sun. You could tell with the clear one that the resin was starting to cure nearly instantaneously. Like, as soon as I walked it, before I even put them down,
you see it was clearly smoke with that much resin.
Yeah, it was clearly. It was a thin layer.
Okay,
but it was already starting to harden. Maybe it was like 2 millimeters thick. It wasn't a ton. The amber one, I left it out there all day, and then I left it on my workbench in the window for the next week, and that resin was fine.
Yeah, I think that, like, blocking 95% of UV is more than adequate. But east-facing windows, right? There's a piece of black poster board for the time lapse, so you don't really notice the sunrise and sunset on some of these ridiculous time lapses. But I had all the printers over there previously.
Yeah.
And on the newer ones, we started noticing that we'd have a film on the vat. We'd have a film of cured resin on the vat, so I had to start covering the vats.
That's no good.
So I ended up just moving everything to the other side of the room, and it's not in the sunlight anymore, and it's totally fine. And now I just do all my washing over there.
Oh, okay.
I need to get a dedicated washing station because I now have enough printers to fill those shelves.
Yeah.
Rip.
And that was my major intent with when I was rebuilding that cover was I don't want to like come back and there's my vat has cured.
I remember
overnight. Yeah. That was fun times, even if I didn't keep the printer because it was a fucking mess.
I think everyone that has these printers has the same gripe. I don't want to take the damn cover off of it. I just want it to open like a door. But even if you had it open like a door, and I could go throw it in my laser right now and cut a big panel out. But
I was tempted.
There's a kerf. there's still that laser curve, and you could put a piece of rubber or something there, and there are ways to do it. But yes, with all these printers, like, all right, I cannot have more than half of them running at a time if I want to clean them all at the same time, because I got to take one cover off and take that cover off, and I set it on the printer next to it upside down.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all like, the vats are like at chin level, so they're all relatively high for me. But it's I can't have anything above it. And it's like one of the big reasons I look at like the Jupiter, the Sonic Mega 8K, and some of these larger printers that have the doors. Well, wait a minute. Yes, all right, you know, side to side is now the issue. But now I can put a shelf on top of it, and it's fine.
Yeah,
it's my biggest gripe and why I don't have more resin printers.
Yeah, that's always a tough thing when you're figuring out where things go. Of like, okay, well, you know, am I going to be blocking access to this in some way, shape, or form?
And access is the big deal, especially with, you know, toxic chemicals, right?
Yeah. Actually, funny thing about that, the cover that I made originally, I think all the parts were printed in PETG.
Yeah.
But the friend that I ended up selling that machine to, he comes back to me about 4 or 5 months later and was like, so the bottom ring has cracked in like 3 places. It just cracked apart, and all we could figure out it was because it kept getting exposed to resin splashing on it, and it somehow degraded the plastic. And the only thing that we found in the end that wouldn't do that
test.
Was I ended up reprinting it in polycarbonate.
Polycarbonate makes the most sense. It's acrylic, more or less.
Right. Well, yeah, and I looked into it. It was like, okay, what's the thing that's the least chemically, you know, active? It's like, okay, polycarbonate.
I mean, that's a big PC part.
Yeah, that was a pain. I had to print it a couple of times to keep it from warping, and that was one of those. It fit with about 2 millimeters of tolerance on my Daedalus, because it was like a 300 millimeter square part for the size of that machine. But yeah, it was kind of a pain.
Now, what is your like? Since you've obviously made tons of stuff in the past, 10, 15 years at least?
Yeah.
What is your favorite project?
My favorite
Other
project
than being able to yell at me for not using virtual arrays in LightBurn that you made.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is you joke about that too, but like also, as much as like I've been a software engineer for years, I have told Jason, the owner of LightBurn, that if it were not for getting the job at LightBurn, I probably would have left the industry.
That's fair.
I don't work on software in my spare time anymore. I used to. I mean, that was my thing. Now I really, really love hardware, building physical things. I like building a thing and being done with it.
Right.
Like, I like the weird things. I have a mouse that I built, which unfortunately is too far away, that uses a pool ball as a trackball.
Yes.
And
the
actual mechanism. Yeah. I mean, I use trackballs for everything.
Hell yeah.
But the actual mechanism is an Atari arcade trackball, because the balls are the same size. And the reason the balls are the same size is because originally they just used pool cues, or not pool cues, the cue ball.
And that's got some mass to it. Yeah.
Right. They went, we need a ball that has some mass and is readily available.
Pool balls.
And it's the same reason why there is a Kensington brand trackball mouse that has the same size ball.
I always wondered if like the what is the Golden Tee games? I'm like, those really feel like it's a pool ball, but it was a little bit larger diameter, I thought.
Yeah, some of them are larger.
Yeah.
I did look at that. So I think mine's like 2 1/4. There's some that are like 3. So that's one of the fun ones. The Engravinator is probably one of my more favorites. And I have hanging up on the wall here, and it's on my website, adamhaile.com. If you see it, there's a project I did called Bixel a couple of years ago. That one's sort of my favorite, partly because I got to step out of the engineering world and into the art world a little bit. It is a 16 by 16 grid, so 256 total,
right,
of buttons, each of which is a pixel, and my naming scheme is terrible. It's literally button pixel equals pixel. I suck at naming shit. But yeah, so that
you had like a Stream Deck before they were cool, but instead of an OLED, it was a individual LED pixel.
Right. So, and with that, we made it because we had done this was when I was doing Maniacal Labs. We had done some LED displays, like Colossus, which was a 2-meter tall LED display that I used to actually have in my office where those 3D printers are.
Nice. Shame you had to remove that, because that would have been cool in the background. It
was really cool. Yeah, it had like a clock on it, but eventually I needed the space back. It had been there for like 5-6 years.
Yeah.
But we had done those as part of a local Raleigh, North Carolina arts festival.
Okay.
And some of the people that ran that approached us and said, like, hey, we're doing art project grants. Are you interested? So we actually got a grant to do an art project.
That's cool.
And that ended up being Pixel, which is a bit nuts. So first of all, one of the reasons why it's my favorite thing is because there is a custom circuit board for it. And that circuit board is 500 millimeters square.
That's a big ass. Why is it that big?
Because that was the biggest that PCBWay would make.
Oh, because every one of those buttons is an LED and they have to be spaced and all that.
Right.
We didn't like RGB keys. How did you get the button plus the LED?
So the thing of it was, we did have some funding for it, but it was about $1,000 and we threw some extra into it.
Yeah.
But we were building it to cost. So the way that it's constructed is, like, I looked into getting buttons that had RGB LEDs into them, but we were talking $1, $2 a button.
Right.
On the cheap end. And they needed to all be individually controlled. So the way that we ended up doing it is the actual LED itself is I think it's an SK9822 LED, which is related. It's a clone of the APA 102, which is what more people know as the dot star. It's the SPI based, with a data and clock line,
okay,
RGB controllable LED.
Yeah.
It seems a little bit weird that we have a PCB for it, but what I literally did was I bought a bare. I've done enough LED stuff at this point that I have LED guys in China that I can get weird shit from.
You've got a guy. That's my favorite people are. I got a guy. Hold on.
Yeah, I have an LED guy. For a while, I used to, for like local people, we would do like bulk buys.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere out there's a video of me unboxing like $12,000 of LEDs. But what we did was we cut up the strip. So it wasn't like, it didn't have any plastic coating. It was just like the bare flex strip
strips
with the LED on it. Because I didn't want to have to like surface mount solder 256, little RGB LEDs. But what I figured is those have large pads. So I just cut them off and I made a footprint where you just set it down on the PCB and you could just solder jump like the pads on there.
From its thing. Yeah.
Right. So the LCD or the LED already has sort of a carrier for it. It makes it so it has bigger pads. It's already got a smoothing capacitor on it. It had all that stuff. It sort of simplified some things.
Right.
And then on either side of that LED is 2 tactile switches. Well, there's one on each side. There's 2 total. The way that we actually made the buttons is there's the PCB with the switches, and then there's like a shit ton of brass spacers.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that is a sheet of acrylic that I cut circles out of. On top of that is another sheet of acrylic that I cut slightly smaller circles out of. And the lower sheet, I literally just took the circles that got cut out, all 256 of them, stuck them back in there. And it's like frosted white acrylic that's semi-translucent.
Yeah.
And it sits on top of the buttons, but the switches don't let them go any further down. And the upper one keeps them in there.
Right.
So wherever you push in on that piece of acrylic, it activates the tactile switches below it and you get a key press. But then we actually had to figure out how to run all of that, and it's wired almost identically to how you would build like a custom Cherry MX keyboard, where each one of those has a diode so that you can do the column and row scanning, except for instead of a 104 key keyboard or whatever, it's 256 and we've got 16 columns and 16 rows. So then we're using a teensy 3.6, I think, 3.5, connected to a couple of shift registers to do all the scanning. All of that's connected to a Raspberry Pi. So basically the Pi just calls out to the teensy and says what buttons are pressed. Actually, I think that the teensy literally just responds with a 16-bit by 16-bit blob of data. So it knows which bit's turned on, and that's the key that's turned on. And then that goes into some custom Python based LED animation stuff that connects to the actual LED strip that's snaking across it. Which is one of the reasons why we use this particular LEDs, because we could control them directly from the Pi.
Right.
And then we ended up with like a bunch of games programmed onto it. So there's
Pong or something on it.
I don't think we did Pong. We did what was it? We did Missile Command, which is fun. Except for instead of firing at the missiles, you literally just have to like hit them, like actually hit the right button at the right time.
Yeah.
There's an old arcade game that's called like Quicks or something like that, where you have to like, there's a ball bouncing around and you have to divide the play area into smaller and smaller sections, and it would do that. You remember the old Lights Out games that were like 5x5?
Yeah.
And you had to like, every time you hit one, it would alternate all the ones around it.
Yeah.
We made that, except for it's 16 by 16, and it's literally unsolvable. Like, unfortunately, it has to be an odd number of rows and columns, otherwise it can't be solved. But the people that were playing with this at the art gallery that it was displayed in were drunk and didn't know that, so it was fine.
It was, it's still fun. Whether you can solve it or not is irrelevant. It's just a big ass wall with buttons on it. Right.
And then the other one really fun one was we did kind of our own version of Bejeweled, where you would actually, anytime you hit a button, that gem would be deleted and then everything else would fall. And then you'd make groupings of the same colors, and then those would disappear and it would chain from there. So we did some fun stuff like that. And it could just display non-interactive things as well. But yeah, I've actually got it hanging up on my wall here. I've had people ask me if I'll ever add new games or whatever to it. And that's one of those things where I'm like, I have no interest in reprogramming that ever or adding new stuff. But
yeah, because things have changed so much since you designed that originally that it's probably not even worth trying to update. It's likely a lot easier just to start from scratch.
Yeah, I ran into that with the giant wall size LED display that I was talking about, where like I had it running on an old Windows 7 PC running like Python 2.6 or something.
Beautiful.
And I thought about updating it to the latest version of the library that I'd written, and then it was like, nope, I'm not touching it because it works, and I don't want it to break.
So many people want to tinker. Like, I'm going to point fingers at the Ender 3 users out there. I'm going to get a printer. I'm going to put $200 of upgrades onto it, and then I'm going to claim all the Pruses are terrible out there because I don't have a value for my own time. That's an upcoming video, by the way. I am buying in all these different upgrades to take my Ender 3 V2 and make it better than a Prusa Mini for less than Prusa Mini money if I ignore my time. And I am not going to tell everybody how much time it took to do the upgrades until the video series is over.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I get into debates with people so much, and it's just like,
I hate it.
Well, yeah, but what's your time worth? And I'm at a weird point in life where my time is worth a lot.
Yeah.
So, I'm much more willing to do things like that.
Back when I had a day job, my time was worth $40 an hour. Right. When I had a day job, that's what I got paid. And I got paid that 40 hours a week.
Right.
50 weeks a year. Right. I was making 80 grand.
Right.
And people are like, well, why do you charge so much now? I said, because you're not paying me 40 hours a week. You want hyper specific information. And there is a thing, like, even if you value your time at $10 an hour, I can tell you right now, it will cost you more at $10 an hour to upgrade an Ender 3 than it is to just buy a damn Prusa Mini from the beginning. And I get it. It's a smaller printer. The video makes way more sense if I'm taking a $200 printer and putting it up against a $450 printer versus going up against an $800 printer.
Yeah.
But, and Jimmy makes a good point that he says, I do want to note that what I learned from upgrading my first ANET A8 was quite a good worth for the time as well, not just the print quality. And that's fair. That upgrade path teaches you so much about the technology.
Oh,
but I also think a Prusa kit does the same thing.
Yes.
They don't pay me to say this, and I really wish they did. Because I do a lot of shilling for Prusa.
Sorry. I kicked over my, speaking of 3D printing, my 3D printed trash can.
Holy shit. Wait a minute. No. You can't just show that and then put it away. What the? That's a really good print. What was that done on?
That form bot that I was talking about.
Did I know you were selling this? I should have known that you were selling
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Getting it to Florida would have been problematic.
That's fair. Dude, that's a clean friggin' print. And that's
one of the first things. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a rainbow filament too, which sometimes can show off some BS.
Right. And the thing was I bought that roll, and it, for whatever reason, whenever I tried to print it on a machine that just had like a 0.4 millimeter nozzle or whatever, the filament would often break before going in. It was like horribly brittle or whatever. So finally I was like, let me just do something simple. And I had the form bot set up with, I think, a 1 millimeter nozzle. I mean, that's single wall.
Shit.
The whole trash can. It's just vase mode.
Thick layers are so much fun though.
Oh, they're so great.
It's the only reason I still have my TAS 6. Only reason.
Yeah, the new printer I'm working on, I've got some of those the fancy CHT nozzles set aside for it. One of them is a 1.8, which I'm very excited about. I mean, that's just going to suck up filament. But yeah, so I printed it on that. That was like a test after I had massively upgraded that printer. I mean, literally replaced everything but pretty much the frame and the bed.
Well, I mean, a bed slinger that large is,
yeah, that was the whole thing.
I've got a buddy that has a CR10S5, and he's like, "Can you quote me this print?" I said, "No, I can't print it in one piece." "Oh, my CR10S5 can do it." I said, "So why are you asking me to do it?" Yeah. "Oh, well, the bed's not level, and I can't get a piece of glass that big that's flat, and then it takes 20 minutes to heat up, and I get warping." I said, "Okay, so why don't you just cut it up?" "Well, I guess I never thought about that." I'm like, "Okay, all right, yeah, cut it up, and if you want me to run it on the farm, I can have it done for you in like 12 hours.
Yeah.
It's a 9.5-day print on a CR10S5. And with the amount of printers we have, it's a 12-hour job.
Yeah.
We just completed 300 hours, 307 hours of printing in a day and a half.
That checks out. Yeah. See, it's the wonder of parallelization.
Yep. Now I have a lot of spools of white filament that are partially open. I have 9 spools.
Oh my god. Yeah, like
white filament.
That is a whole thing. And I always end up with like spools that have, 50, 100 grams of filament left. And it's one of the reasons why when Printed Solid came out with their 2.3 kilogram spools, I jumped on those because I'll use a lot of PLA for stuff.
Yeah.
For a lot of the times my minis are just loaded with a 2.3 kilogram spool all the time, because then if I get down to 50 grams on that, I don't care as much because I'm not like wasting it on a bunch of spools. I print with those a lot because I hate having that little bit left at the end. And I also I don't really, I mean, you can see on my shelf up here, there's a yellow roll and a blue roll, and I think those are the only colors I have currently that aren't black or orange.
That's fair.
I just always print with the same colors because I don't print for people generally. Or if I do, the answer is, well, you can have it in any color you want as long as it's orange or black.
The Henry Ford method. Yes. It's hilariously, I've got a bunch of colors because a lot of them I buy for myself. Most people want gray, black, white, red, and that's it. Like, I've got like the parts that are on the blue right there. I have had that spool of blue PETG for like 2.5 years.
Oh jeez.
It's wet, but whatever. They're little. I had a last minute thing to come do a talk on Sunday, so they're takeaways for everybody at the convention that I'm going to. It's a very, very intimate thing. It's 30 people, so I'll make 30 little tags and give them away. So people can have something in hand with 3D printing. But I can make 30 tags on one machine in 12 hours. 2 separate prints because I can only
see. I find that funny being in the laser world. I'm like 12 hours, 30 tags. That's like a 10-minute job. I don't know what you're talking about.
Look, and I can easily do that on the laser. Like Bob Ziranti, I'm done in like 30 minutes. Because I can only scan at 375 or below. If I go above 375 millimeters a second, the machine really starts to resonate. The resonation you see, and this does not have my new business cards don't have my personal cell phone number on them anymore, so I can show them. I accidentally leaked my personal cell phone number a couple of times.
Oops.
But if you guys look at the flat line on it, you'll see some waving. That's at 375.
Oh geez.
If I go any faster than that, it starts to skip steps because it's resonating so badly.
That's no good.
Yeah, it's a black and red, generic
just
eBay
generic
laser.
clone.
Yeah. But you know what?
That's fair.
The average person, one, if they notice it, thinks it's deliberate. So that's fine. Or then 2, doesn't notice it at all. The old cards were just straight wood. We found that the white painted wood that you could buy, it's cheaper than the plywood, ends up actually being a better scenario. But yeah, that's like one of the big problems with these cheap lasers. I think everything is as tight as I can get it, and the machine is still loose.
Yeah, that is a real thing. I mean, they're built to a cost, and there's something that you're going to be missing out with on that. Like one of the earliest lasers I had, one of the best things I ever did for it was to replace all of the mirror mounts with genuine Thor Labs mirror mounts. Because
I should have done
that. I would have it be in alignment one day, and the next day it would be completely out of alignment.
This is Florida. It's in my garage. Literal thermal expansion becomes a problem.
Right. So finally, when I switched to like some proper mounts, now I admit they're not cheap, but in the grand scheme of things for that laser, they weren't that expensive. I think it was like $120 for a set of 3 mounts or something.
Oh God, is it that cheap? Shit,
I don't remember.
I really should be doing something like this.
Maybe it was 150. I don't know. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
It wasn't that bad compared to the cost of a large laser. It's better than buying a new one, and like that helped a lot with maintaining focus or maintaining alignment. And like the 2 large CO2 lasers that I have now obviously have like they're not Thor Labs brand or whatever, but they're nicer than just like the sheet metal bent pieces that kind of thing. They're actually milled.
I'm at the point where my tube is getting old. It's 5 years old. 5 years old. It still cuts.
Kind of old for laser. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when I first got it, we could cut through 1/8 inch at like 25, 27 millimeter seconds in 80-watt tube. Now I'm down to 14. So we've lost basically 50% of the power of the laser. And I'm like, if I'm going to get a tube, I'm getting a tube with the damn inline red dot. Because oh my God, is that going to make aligning so much easier?
Those are actually hard to find. The funny thing is,
them.
Okay, so maybe not. Last I looked, it was only SPT, and they were really expensive.
They're like an extra $150.
Okay, that's not terrible. But no, that's worth it for that, because both of my machines, which are nice machines, are beam combiners.
And beam combiners, you lose what? 10-15% of power in the beam combiner alone?
Probably, yeah. And then you have to, even if your red dot's aligned, that doesn't necessarily mean that the laser's aligned, because
this is like I'm assuming it is some style of a beam combiner, but it's built into the tube.
It's physically in the tube, and it's factory calibrated to be straight. I get that.
And I'm at this point of, all right, I could put a $400 tube into this laser, but why don't I just buy another laser? Put a cheap ass tube in the cheap ass laser and get a good laser to start. Because like this one had the red dot at the angle right by the head. I replaced it with the 2 line lasers, and I accidentally printed it all in PLA, and the laser came out of alignment, and the PLA melted during a during a cut one time, and I ripped it off, and I've never put it back on because I just cut my own jig for the laser where everything burns. And there are so many things like, all right, I wish it had this. I wish it had good lighting system. I wish I could put a camera in it. I wish it had autofocus. All these things that this laser doesn't have that would make my life a lot easier. If I had a camera, I could just watch it here, not to stand out there with a fire extinguisher praying that it doesn't catch fire.
As an employee of LightBurn, I'm pretty sure that I'm required to tell you that we don't recommend remote use of a laser cutter, but
I run it with a USB drive and I go out there and I sit and I wait for it to finish. So yes, I'm not in here while it's doing its thing. It's not remote like that. It is untethered operation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right. I thought you were talking about like, literally viewing it remotely.
If I had a camera, I mean, I probably would just do that. And I could stick, I could stick a Wise Cam on the inside of it that I could then hook up to a smart plug. So if it did for some reason start to go up, I can turn it off while I grab a fire extinguisher. It is literally 10 feet away from me. It's not that far.
Okay, that's fair. That's not too bad. Like we've definitely heard some horror stories of people that like, their laser was on fire for 6 minutes before anyone noticed.
I had one, it was a client call. It was the first time one of our engineers talked to a client without me. Because I said, I am literally putting out a fire in my laser right now. You're going to have to deal with the client. And that's when I found out I have a very charismatic engineer. And the client's like, can we just work with him from now on? You talk too damn much.
That's great.
I'm like, but you pay me by the hour. It's good that I talk a lot.
Nice.
And that's when I stopped charging people for phone calls. Unless they're like egregiously long. But I want lasers to become a little bit easier to use. And I think LightBurn solved 95% of those problems. And I think the rest of it is I was a cheap ass and didn't get, the $50,000 laser. I think it was $2,800 when I bought it. I had to buy a separate chiller for it. It came with that big centrifugal fan that draws 800 watts. Cucked that thing and bought a fan for a grow house. Will never look back.
Even I think Thunder has now, they've switched from the centrifugal fans to that style of blower.
I just need
because everyone was just throwing it out. I threw mine out.
I still have mine because I'm like, I want to make a wacky wavy inflatable arm flailing tube man with it, because I think that's about the only valid use for one of those is to be one of those. But things like, okay, it only sucks out fumes from one side of the laser. It doesn't suck it from the bottom. It's from one side. Why does it not have multiple outlets that I can somehow control?
So I'm trying to think. Yeah, some of them, they end up being on the side, which always sucks.
Yep. And it has like grates on the top and the bottom.
Right. So my Thunder laser, it's in the back and the middle. So it's at least better than nothing. It's pulling it towards the back.
Yep.
The Aeon is the best that I've seen because it's through the bed and it's sealed. Like the whole machine is sealed.
The only bummer about that is if you're engraving, at least from my experience, it doesn't pull it out as fast as one from like the side or from the back on its own, if that makes sense.
Well, and actually, like the Aeon that I have has a built-in blower, and I have it also hooked up to the blower that I had for the Thunder, and I always turn them both on. Just extra boost of power for it.
The best upgrade we ever did was installing a Y connector on the outlet, so I could draw air through the chiller so that the chiller wouldn't heat soak my garage. It would be 115 degrees in that garage. The tube is sweating, right? Because at that point, we chill to 17C, so we chill below ambient. So the tube is sweating. I've had multiple times where the tube arcs to the case because it's what's going to happen, right?
Oh my God.
It's now Flex Seal, hilariously.
Nice.
It's rubber. It's rubberized and it insulates.
That would work. I don't have that problem. We don't have quite the humidity here, but
that's why I love lasering in the winter, because it doesn't.
But I have the problem of lasering in the winter where
it freezes.
Well, I mean, I'm in North Carolina, so like it's rare that it would freeze. I do have a heater out there just in case. It's one of those little radiant like oil heaters, 1500 watt things, which is enough. But and my garage is insulated at this point.
Yeah.
But the funny thing of it is if I'm in there and I've gotten it up to a comfortable temperature, the blower fan I have will do like 1200 cubic feet per minute. Well, my garage is
sealed.
It's not sealed, and it's about 4,000 cubic feet. So within 4 minutes, I have lost all of the warm air.
Yep. I haven't thought about that. We considered, and see, this is how bad it got before I figured out, wait a minute, I can just pipe in the chiller. I considered making a cool shirt that I would plumb in line with the laser so that I could be out there and not get heat stroke.
Not die. Yeah.
Because it got like to the point of, I'm not running this laser anymore. It will run at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that is it. And 2 o'clock in the morning in the summer in Florida is like still 28, 27. It is December 11th. It is 83 degrees or 28 degrees centigrade outside right now.
Oh my God.
So I can't, if I run the laser right now, it's going to sweat.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
Things you don't think about.
Yeah, no, I would not have thought. I mean, because it gets pretty hot here.
Yeah.
But like, not quite as humid.
I want lasers that are more electrically isolated so that they don't ground themselves out. I want built-in power meters. I made my own power meter. So, you know, I've got the analog and I've got the digital.
Mine has one, but it's on the power supply inside the laser in the back.
Well, how useful is that?
It's not.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's a nice little LCD display, but it doesn't tell you. So the funny thing is, like, you know, you're talking about wanting lasers to be more accessible.
Yeah.
And I'm having honestly trouble seeing a path towards getting laser cutting being to the point that, and I'm not talking about laser engraving with those stupid diodes that you're going to burn your eyes out with.
Like CO2 cutting through laser.
I don't see it anytime soon getting to the point that 3D printers are at today, where you can pick something up for sub $1,000. And I know that 3D printers are even cheaper than that these days.
Yep.
But I feel like that below $1,000 is the point where it really starts to get into someone who's just a hobbyist, at least considering it. And above that, you're probably not going to, unless you're a real enthusiast. Because, like, yeah, everyone's probably going to scream, but the Glowforge, which costs how much again?
$3,500, I think. And look, they're not a bad. And see, here comes, you know, the business owner, right? If Glowforge had existed when I was getting into laser cutting, I firmly believe I would have spent the extra money, because the entire system is integrated, and the system is integrated to a point where it is so it's the Apple system. It is unbelievably expensive, but it freaking works, right? Their cameras can read the QR codes. It knows the settings it needs and all of those things. The one thing we haven't seen yet, or at least I haven't seen a ton of, is what happens when the Glowforge tube dies. I'm pretty sure you have to get a new Glowforge. I don't think they replaced the tubes.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Like, also as a content creator, like, hey, Glowforge, hit me up, right? I mean, look, I'd love another laser.
One of the issues that I have with the Glowforge, we've had some people come over to LightBurn from Glowforges, and they've gotten like rereaded machines.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, how do I convert my settings from Glowforge to
really can't
LightBurn stuff? You can. After a bunch of reverse engineering work I did, sort of. The problem of it is they'd be like, we'd say like, well, what power are you running at? And they'd be like, you know, 80. Was that 80%? It's 80.
Yep.
What speed are you running at? 500. Okay. What units?
Probably millimeters a minute, I would assume.
But it's not.
Oh, geez. What is it?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I actually ended up through a bunch of research on their website, and then like some details I got from some various things, ended up making a spreadsheet that can convert them. And yeah, it's just like some weird internal units. And the fun thing is it's not linear.
Oh, of course it's not. Why would it be linear?
Yeah.
There's a Glowforge user like 5 or 6 blocks away. I only found this out because I was going yard sailing and they had a bunch of laser cut stuff for the yard sale. I'm like,
oh, nice.
You have a laser, don't you? And she's got a Glowforge Pro. She can't run it in the summer. They don't have chillers. It can't get cold enough in the summer.
Air cooled.
It's air cooled. It can't get cold enough in the summer. She said, so I have to predict what my sales will be in the summer in the winter. So
and yeah, you can't even hook it up to a chiller. Like the best thing you could do is like
you have to
stick an AC unit close to it.
Well, she was going to cut the lines. What they end up doing is putting a bunch of fans on it so they can try to sub-ambient cool it by using like swamp cooling and all that kind of thing. Oh, but I said, look, go look at like a Boss laser or something that, you know, and I Boss lasers are just Quickies or G-Wix, right? They're just rebranded. But Boss has all of a sudden not been very quiet about that anymore. They're now like talking that they do this.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, like
Whatever.
I called the salespeople and asked about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what we do." I'm like, you're gonna tell me that easy? That's what you do? Well, yeah. If you already know the company, why would you buy from us? I'm like, okay, well, can't blame you for being honest.
That's odd. Yeah, I get the whole like with Glowforge, the whole sort of closed ecosystem. It just works. I mean, mind you, I'm not an Apple user, and it's kind of for that reason. I
Same.
like to be able to. Yeah, it's fine. I like to be able to dig into whatever I've got and muck with it. But I get that. Like for some people, they talking in millimeters per second, they don't know what that means or what percentage of the tube power is or any of that, and that's fine. Mind you, we try to make that as easy as possible in LightBurn. And the funny thing of it is, LightBurn kind of exists because of Glowforge.
Really?
Jason had ordered one, and then he found out that the software was web only.
No kidding.
And was like, nah, screw that.
Yeah, and it's like it's I always laugh at like what got our channel started? Cricut. Making a video about Cricut screwing their user base, and now all of a sudden we are at like 26 almost 3,000 subscribers, like 2,960 as of this morning.
Nice.
You know, and it's since March, and I've loved this entire drive, but there's so many things that like I want to do more laser content. I want to do like, all right, let's replace a laser tube. Like I want to make filament storage. A buddy of mine showed me some IKEA carts that hold filament okay. Then another, and that was Ben, now works over at Railcore, and Jordan Mad Monkey built some custom. I'm like, oh, I would love to do that. Something similar. I want to film it because I can turn that into a video. Oh yeah, I can't do any of that because it weighs more than I can lift. And it's like, it's like I am itching to get back. I think the back injury, while terrible, has like given me a newfound love for making, because I've had to find ways around the injury to get to making. And the laser has been one of those things like, all right, I can cut this out quick.
Yeah.
And be able to have something in hand. I want to do a big LED sign for the YouTube channel to where patrons can webhook control it during live streams, because
that's dangerous.
Why? It's just no, like WLED sign, not like a television. Because Wexter's in the damn chat right now, and I know he'd be the one that puts phalluses in the background. Love you, Wexter, but you're dangerous for live streams.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, when you have stuff where like people send messages to this LED display via Twitter, it's like,
you sure you want to do that?
You know what those are going to be.
You sure you want to do that?
Real quick.
But it is interesting to watch this industry grow, and the 3D printing, the making industry in general. I mean, geez, we both kind of started at the same time. You had a little bit more experience learning. I threw myself into it. You worked your way into it, and I mean, geez, could you imagine that we would be here today where we were 10 years ago?
Not even remotely. I mean, I'm still kind of surprised with the stuff that I've done, like with the stuff that I've gotten to do and the stuff that I'm working on now and whatnot. Like, I mean, hell, I can trace working at LightBurn directly back to going to Bay Area Maker Faire in 2018. Like, it's a direct line of really strange events that have happened in my life.
Yeah.
To get me to that point. Part of that includes being at a Korean karaoke bar at 2 a.m.
Korean karaoke bar at 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Amber, we need to find Korean karaoke bars.
Right. In New York, in New York City with Drew Festini from OSH Park.
There's no such thing that exists in my area. There's no Korean karaoke bars.
Sure. Well, and it's I've always said to people, like, with stuff like that is, when you go to like maker fairs or conventions and stuff, always go to the after party.
Yeah.
Find out what it is. Always go, because that's where the real stuff happens of, networking and whatnot. And that has definitely gotten me into a lot of weird things. But even like, aside from that, like, I think I said in the bio thing I sent you, like, one of the things I was earlier known for in the open source software world was writing a Pandora Radio desktop client. And I just wrote it for fun and partly to learn some new technology at the time.
Right.
I think it was like WPF for .NET, like C# stuff, because it was what I was using at work. And I wanted something to learn it with that wasn't business software, something that was a little bit more interesting. And I wrote that, and like, I've had weird times where like I went and worked at Red Hat and I got talking to someone and we got talking about, music services and stuff. I mean, Pandora, I don't think it's really nearly as relevant as it used to be, but at the time it was one of the big things. And they were like, yeah, did you ever use that Windows Pandora client called Elpis? I was like, yes, I wrote it. Those are weird situations where, like, people will meet you and then ask you about something that you did. It's like, why do you know about this?
Elpis is on this computer.
You're fucking kidding me.
I am not. Nope. This computer was originally built in 2014. Oh, in the past 6 months, past 3 months, it went from a 4770K, which is sitting over there with its motherboard. Now it's a 10400K. Or 10400, and now it's going to go up to a 10700K because I got this for $150, and you absolutely do that for $150.
Yeah, but sure.
The hard drives,
just transferred.
Yeah, I just moved all the data. So Elpis is still on this computer.
Oh my god!
Is there a way for me to figure out what version it is?
I mean, it's probably whatever the last one was, which is 2 point something. I don't know. It hasn't been updated in years, and I think it finally stopped working.
When this stream is over, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna let you know.
You have to go check and let me know. Yeah. I haven't. It's one of those where like I kind of abandoned the project a long time ago. I tried to get someone else to take it over because, and I joke with friends of mine, like the worst thing to happen to me would be to be overly known for something, because I don't want to be stuck being like, well, no, that's the guy that does this and only that.
Yeah, I'm the 3D printing guy. I'm the guy that yells into his microphone, right? That's what I'm known for now.
Right. Whereas with me, it's like, I'm very much the type where I'm like, cool, I learned that. What next?
Yeah, we were working on the thumbnail. I move on to the
new thing.
And we're like, what the hell do we put on there? I said, I don't know, Maker Extraordinaire, because I don't really know anything other. Like, I don't know what else to put on his thumbnail.
Yeah, I very much, jack of all trades, master of none. I do a lot of stuff. But like, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah, with Elpis. So originally when that started, it was semi-based on a Linux, like Python command line version. I figured out the API from that. And the original ones, they used the web API back when Pandora was a Flash player. So this is how far back it goes.
I was using Elpis in like college.
Oh my god, that's amazing. So the reason I wrote it was the Flash player would use like 500 megs of RAM.
But computers only had like 4 gigs if you were lucky.
Right. I mean, I got 64 gigs now, but I definitely did not in 2008, 2009. And
there's a 32 gig kit that I'm going to add to this computer when I do the processor upgrade.
It's ridiculous. So I wrote Elpis and it only used like 20 or 30, which is great. It's very, very lightweight. But we used the web API. And the funny thing was Pandora refused to acknowledge that we existed, both my client and the Linux one.
Mm-hmm.
But they would constantly break it. And they could, because we were using the web API. And the only thing that was supposed to be using the web API was their Flash player. So all they had to do was change the API,
and
refresh the page, and you're good to go. And it no longer worked.
Yep.
And it finally got to the point where one day they broke it and we could not figure out how to fix it. And I don't remember what the exact details of it were, but we could not figure out how to fix it.
Okay.
And I started talking to the guy that had been working on the Linux client, and we sort of had a little bit of back and forth on that. We weren't like overly collaborating, but we were kind of sharing notes on what the API stuff was. And eventually the way that we solved it was we got a APK from the Android Pandora Radio client and disassembled it and sort of and did traffic captures on that on it running in an emulator on Windows and Linux to figure out what the traffic was. And the beauty of it is that Android devices and iPhones were using the embedded device API, which is a completely different API. And it was the same one that they use for stereos, which means they can't change it.
Right, because it would break all the stereos.
Right. So once we reverse engineered it, it's worked for like 6, 7, 8 years. I don't know how long at this point. And I think I finally had someone email me like, hey, I don't think it works anymore. Is there any chance you can fix it? And it's not on my radar anymore of things to work on. But like it worked for, literally like 4 or 5 years without me even actively maintaining the project.
All about like this is the embodiment of making awesome. Like, all right, how do we do this so they can't screw with us again? How do we do that? I just love that. I'm pretty certain Elpis is on this computer. Let me see. And when you have hard drives dating back to 2014, they are not the same hard drives dating back to 2014.
Yeah, but the data.
Yeah, the data is the same.
And I think at one point, last I looked, I think I had 150,000 installs or something like that. Because it would hit a web link that would literally just send it hey, I got another install. No data, just I got another install.
Yeah, you were chasing numbers. Ain't no one gonna blame you there.
Right. So I ran that, and I think it got up to like 150,000. It was on Lifehacker. It was featured on a couple of things. I think it was like PC Magazine and stuff like that. The funny thing was when I launched it, it was out for a couple of months, and then Lifehacker picked it up. And that weekend, when I happened to be out of town, they picked it up. It got a shit ton of downloads, and Pandora broke it because this was before we went to the new API.
Right.
And it was I had all these like bug reports, like hundreds of people installing it, all these bug reports. It doesn't work. I know I'll be home soon and then I'll fix it. And
that's still that's an achievement, right? I think a lot of us makers, our achievement is what? Hack a day, make magazine, maybe something on like Medium or Make Zine, right? And you got picked up with this program. That's pretty awesome.
I will mention one thing because you mentioned Hackaday. I think a lot of people seem to think that the only way that stuff gets picked up on Hackaday is someone at Hackaday happens to see it because it went viral or got picked up by other people.
Right.
And I was talking to,
They're
an
aggregator, yeah.
Right. And I get that, and that's fine. But I was talking to our good friend Joe Spanier.
Yep.
Spanier. A while back, and I had mentioned something about, one of the projects I was on Hackaday. And he was like, what the fuck, man? How did you get your shit on Hackaday? I wanted to get something on Hackaday forever. And I was like, and he's like, well, that's cool though. You finally got something on Hackaday. I was like, finally? It's like, what? I was like, and I sent him a link to the various things that I had on there. It's like, how? I sent it to them.
Yeah,
there's a tips@hackaday.com. I emailed them. Hey, I worked on this thing. I think it's cool. Maybe you'll think it's cool.
I got to do that. Usually post about it more often.
Yeah, it's fun. The best interaction I've ever had on Hackaday was for the Bixel, and they picked it up. They posted an article about it, and the first comment, and I should always remember to never read the fucking comments. The first comment was a guy going, well, that's not that impressive. Mine's bigger, basically. And he posted this YouTube video link, which I actually happened to check the other day, is now since gone. And it was like a wall display, and I'm pretty sure it was made out of like old Tupperware containers. And like, yeah, it was interactive. You could push on them and they would do things. And he's like, I built it for Burning Man or whatever. But it was literally less than 30-second video and bitching about it. And the thing that Hackaday had linked to was I used to do like long, like 10, 15,000 word write-ups.
Yeah.
And I'm not the type where I will do those like videos or something as I'm doing them. I'll just get the project done.
Right.
And then I'll write it up. All the stuff I did on
the same way.
And they had linked to that. And I had used, or as I mentioned, a Teensy in it. So apparently the fact that Teensy was mentioned summoned the great Paul something whose last name I can't pronounce. The guy that makes Teensy, Stinokrin or something. No. Anyways, it kind of ended up summoning him onto the Hackaday comment section, and he just smacked that guy into the ground.
Beautiful. Makes me happy whenever that happens, right?
Was basically just like, what the hell are you talking about? You have a 20-second video. He's got a 10,000 word write-up and and a relatively long, detailed video about it. Like, stop complaining.
This happened in one of our recent videos where we looked at the Wham Bam Mutant and someone said, oh, well, this is better. And I just left it alone. I'm like, I'm not touching this. I got the Mutant for review. Like, I have to say unbiased. Wham Bam went in the comments. And there was like 3 or 4 comments of why theirs was better with like,
that's fun.
Data, like actual data. And I just hearted all of them. I'm like, yep, you know what?
That's all you can do.
That's all I got, right? They were there to defend their own honor, right?
Yeah, I really should always not read the comments, because there's always so much either vitriol or someone who thinks that they know better, and
our comments are reasonably tame. I mean, there's only a few times I've had to all right, I'm gonna delete these comments now because they're not all that nice. Quite frankly, the only time I've gotten like kind of not the nice comments is like calling Amber short in the videos. So in one of the videos, we put her on a box, so she was as tall as me, and then we had her step down. Like we were poking fun back, but we have a good group of people here, and that's what I do love about the making industry. There are assholes. There are gonna be assholes in every community for any reason at all. But there's also really good people out there. And, Adam, you are absolutely one of those people. I mean, we've been talking for well over 2 hours. So
thank you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Is any final thing you want to talk about, or you want to call this one?
I think we can call it. There's probably nothing else.
Awesome. Do you know my outro?
I don't.
Now is when I get to see, do they watch my videos?
I have, but I don't remember. I watch so much stuff, man.
It's all good, dude. I just like poking fun at people. Guys, go give Adam's site some love. Go follow him on social media. We got links to all of his stuff down in that description down below. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you haven't. All those things you do for the creators that you love. And if you don't love us, you've watched this far, you sure you don't love us? Anyways, stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.